Welcome. Thank you for joining us on today's webinar, hosted by the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations. My name is Victor Trinidad with NCPMI. This webinar is part of the Within the Framework webinar series. Today's topic is Reflections from the Field, Positive Solutions for Families, presented by Ashley McNish, Gino Hafner, Beth Lone, and Jasmine Davis.
Thank you, Victor. My name's Ashley McNish. I'm your webinar host today from the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations. I'm also a member of the Family Engagement Work Group who was tasked with the updates of the Positive Solutions materials. So we're really excited to kind of break those down for you today, but I have some wonderful panelists with me today who have years of experience using Positive Solutions for Families materials, both old and new, and some of them have also been family participants themselves. So they've got a lot of great experience to share with us, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with Beth.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Beth Lone. I'm a family support specialist for the Southern New Jersey Regional Early Intervention Collaborative. We're one of 4 regional offices for the New Jersey Early Intervention System. I've been involved now for about 2 years with Positive Solutions for Families with a great facilitation and coaching from Montclair State University. And now I'm going to pass it to Gino.
Good afternoon. I'm Gino Hafner. I'm a parent case manager for the Regional Intervention Program in Nashville, Tennessee. I experienced PSF as a parent when I was on the wait list to participate in RIP using the old materials. And then a few years later was trained as a facilitator on the old materials and then recently on the new materials. And pass it to Jasmine.
Hi, everyone. I have recently changed positions. I'm a resource consultant for the Regional Intervention Program Nashville, where Gina works. I've been facilitating Positive Solutions for Families for about 4 years now with the old and new materials, both in person and virtually, and I'm excited to be here with you guys today.
Thanks, Jasmine. We're excited to have all of you share your reflections as we go through our setup today. So this is our agenda. I'm going to briefly describe what Positive Solutions for Families is, because I know we may have a mix of people viewing this today who are new to it, and then we might have some people who are here who do have experience but maybe just want to see what's new. We'll talk about where you can find the materials. As we provide an overview of the materials today, I'll be having conversations throughout with Beth and Jasmine and Gino. And like Victor said, if we have time, we'll be able to answer questions from you all. So please, as we're talking, we've got my colleague Megan here manning the Q&A. Post those questions in the Q&A. And if anything that Beth or Jasmine or Gino says that maybe you've had experience with some of the materials that you'd like to share in the chat box with others as well. We love to hear from everybody. So what is Positive Solutions for Families? It's a series of sessions. It's really intended to support families by filling their toolbox with the strategies that we know teachers use in their early childhood classrooms and bringing it into the home setting to really support their own child's positive social and emotional outcomes. And there's a strong emphasis on the promotion of these social and emotional skills that you see listed here on this slide, as well as strategies to help parents know how, feel confident addressing and preventing challenging behavior with their child in the home. So, like I said, if we're thinking about the pyramid, Positive Solutions for Families, it's intended to provide those general information. So think more the base of the pyramid for families about key strategies they could use to support their child's healthy social and emotional development and address those challenging behaviors in the home. And we do know that some families come to us with more intense or specific needs or behavioral concerns that they have about their child. So we love if, one tip as a facilitator is to really be knowledgeable about the resources you have in your community, local agencies, thinking about where you can help support families beyond positive solutions for families if they do come to you with some of those specific needs, because the sessions are not meant to really address that. It's really that key general information. So I'm going to start with my first question for Jasmine. And then Beth, I know if you want to chime in, please do from the New Jersey perspective. But what are some ways that you've connected families to resources beyond the positive solutions for families?
So we have a unique opportunity at RIP Nashville because the majority of families who come to our Positive Solutions for Family series are awaiting their entry to the RIP program, much like Gino's experience with his family. So parents are looking for that individualized, more top of the pyramid service eventually, but it's really neat because being able to go through that Positive Solutions and already build some community with other parents who are going through similar situations as they are, they get to be connected with some resources. They might even get their needs met and not need such an individualized program. So, and then if they do carry on to the program, they have a really great foundation to build on.
That's awesome. I love how it's almost like you're able to provide that support right away, and kind of like how we see with kids in the classroom, that if we provide these general strategies in the beginning, we may not need to get to those intensive supports. And so it's kind of cool you're seeing that with the family experience as well. Beth, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yes, please. So in New Jersey, it's a little bit different. We have the families that are participating in Positive Solutions are enrolled in our early intervention program. So we do provide a lot of local resources, state resources, national resources, and we also have found that the families are giving each other support and resources that may not be they may not have known about, but they are already in the program. So I think, that's a little bit unique from Tennessee. So.
And that's a good point too, how it's a really great way to get families together to learn and hear from each other as well. I love that. So where can we actually find the materials? So if you've been on our website recently, you may have noticed it's had a little bit of an update. So right on our homepage, we have a featured resource. And so right now, Positive Solutions for Families is a featured resource. So it's packaged in modules 1 through 7. So with one click, you just get to download all the materials that we're going to talk about today. They're available in English and Spanish, in case you're wondering. We have both. And then there are a few other places you can look. So I know this picture here was created prior to our little website update, but at the very top, if you're on the homepage of our website, and I know Megan's going to put www.challengingbehavior.org into the chat for you. You'll see on the top right, there's a red tab, our resource library. You can click on there, and in the search bar, you can type in Positive Solutions and the sessions will pop up. You can download from there. We also have it posted on our webinar announcements. So if you go on to the Training and Technical Assistance tab at the top on the homepage and click on webinars, you can look for this webinar. It'll be posted there. And then I'll also just point out the family engagement page. Again, on the homepage, there's an implementation tab. You can scroll down to family engagement, and there are a lot of really great handouts that are linked in our facilitators guide that just gives you easy access right there on that page as well. So let's get into our positive solutions. So this is a list for the sessions that we cover. You'll see if you are familiar with the positive solutions, the old materials, we've added a new session, the power of routines. And so the purpose of this is to really help families make that connection, that safety, that predictability of routines is really linked to the self-regulation of their child. And so it helps families maybe build awareness of, hey, we've already got this in place. So how do we maintain it? Or maybe just giving families some ideas of strategies they can use to create those predictable parts of their day. We have incorporated a lot of reflection and discussion into these sessions. So we always get asked, well, how many families should you have in a group? And it's really gonna vary. I know a lot of facilitators have told me kind of 6 to 8 is a good sweet spot. The way that we timed the sessions, because we do provide suggested timing for each of the sessions, I'll show you where you can find that, we've provided enough time for about 10 people to share back in those reflection and discussion activities. So that would be about 20 minutes per group activity. So we've really planned these to be about an hour and a half to 2 hours of training content. Again, it's gonna, each group is different. I'm sure Beth and Gino and Jasmine would all agree. It also kind of depends on the makeup of your group. So you may have a really quiet group where you'll kind of go through the content pretty quickly, or maybe you have a lot of talkers where it's taking a while. So as a facilitator, regarding those logistics, thinking about, can you provide childcare or the time of the day that you plan these sessions, it's really going to vary based on the facilitator's knowledge of the group. And we provide facilitators the freedom to break up these sessions with whichever way works best for them and the group that they're facilitating. So that leads me to another question. I'm going to start with Beth this time. Can you discuss some of the planning decisions that you've made as a facilitator? So for example, maybe thinking about group size or how you chose to share materials, any of that.
Absolutely. So we started in the height of COVID. We were using the old materials, but we didn't have that opportunity for those in-person sessions with the families. So we had to do some adapting. There's some really valuable role plays that throughout some of the sessions that we wanted to try and find a way to engage the families more rather than just kind of talking through the role play since we couldn't interact it. So a colleague of mine and I recorded the role plays using toys and acting out the role play in a situation with a parent and a child. And that really seemed to help grab the parents' attention. It was a little bit shorter, a little bit easier for them to watch. So that was very helpful, trying to adapt this into a virtual world. We took a lot of time. We did a lot of work together and with our coaches as well. And we also tried to offer within the virtual COVID world at that time, various times of day and various days of the week, so that we could then try and help draw in more families. There were some difficulties, everybody was home. So during the day sometimes didn't work, and then at night didn't work. But we did find that, there was a lot of engagement with families in doing these role plays and adapting it to that virtual format.
Yeah, and I love how role plays can be hard enough, and we're going to talk about them as an adult learning strategy later on in the presentation, but how you kind of thought outside the box. It's like, let's make this a video, because that could be really challenging to do virtually, in front of a group of people, especially I know on Zoom, you can't always see who's talking and everything. So I love that idea of the video. Gino, did you have, what are some planning decisions your team made?
Going over the material and kind of deciding which activities we felt would work better virtually versus in person, and putting the slides in order to match the materials that we were going to present. But then similar to Beth, we also, for role playing, Jasmine and I would act out live on camera, sometimes using props, which we felt that it would be easier if us being familiar with the material, and it would be more engaging for parents to see it rather than trying to pull them in virtually.
I love that. Jasmine, was there anything else that Beth or Gino didn't say that you wanted to add to that? No, okay, not a problem. I just want to make sure if anyone has things to share, they get that opportunity. Okay. So these are the materials that when you do download them, that you'll receive in your download. There's a facilitator's guide, scripts for each session, PowerPoint, a family handbook, and a routine guide. I know somebody asked if there's a standard survey form in the Q&A. It is going to be added to the zip file and will be promoted on social media soon. So that's just kind of asking, I guess, like a survey feedback form for families to provide their feedback between sessions. And so before we kind of dive into each, we're going to go over each of these different materials today. But before we do that, because I know all three of you have experience with both the old materials and the new materials. From your facilitator's perspective, what's something that you liked about the new materials? And Gina or Jasmine, we can start with you.
Oh, I think that the new material, it's the facilitation role's a little easier. With the old materials, there wasn't a lot of guidance. And so there was maybe a little too much freedom in putting it together. The new materials, I feel like you're kind of following the script. There is room to rearrange things and, pick some activities over others. And I also, and then again, I also think that the new materials are beautiful. They're really, they're a lot friendlier on screen, and I think they're more engaging too.
Yes, and I'll add that I'm so grateful for the family handbook, having all of the parent activities in one place for them to find instead of the numbered activities and matching worksheets. It got a little confusing with the old materials. So I really love that handbook, and it's very easy to read and simple to find everything. And we have funding to send out the paper copies of those to families so that they have a hard copy if they don't have access to a printer. Yeah, and I agree with Gino, it's beautiful. It's very modern, and I love the photos and simplicity of it.
That's great. Thank you both. Beth, did you have a resource that you wanted to share?
Yes, and I agree that the new materials are crisp and new and inviting, and I think that's something that helps engage the families. But what really stood out for me was the family routine guide. That, is a new resource. And in New Jersey, working with infants and toddlers, there were a lot of families that didn't really understand that throughout their day, what they were doing with their child was a routine. They didn't necessarily understand that, and having that visually and being able to, follow through that guide, write down tips, different things like that was something that I really felt it was clear and a little easier for families to follow.
Such a good point, Beth. I think families hear us as professionals talk about routines all the time. It's like, what is that? What I do, it's not a routine. And then they just see it's a part of their day that they do every day. And so I love that. I hope that maybe some of you have had experience with the new materials. If you'd like to share any of your favorite items in the chat, feel free. But I'm going to move on so that we can start to kind of break down each thing. So first we have the facilitators guide. And so this is really to help prep you as a facilitator to really think intentionally about the planning behind each of your sessions, maybe how you'd like to share materials, tips for recruiting participants, follow-up ideas when sessions are over. And so I'm going to ask Beth, what advice or tip might you give a new facilitator getting ready to implement a positive solutions for families event?
A couple things, thank you. One would be definitely practice using the videos and the technology before you start when you're doing it virtually. In this virtual world, we've all had it where, something doesn't work, somebody can't hear it. So practicing that, we would always get on early to test out the technology. That's definitely a big one to troubleshoot. But then we also utilize the activities within the family handbook as breakout sessions for some of our groups. When we had larger groups, it was a little bit more intimidating, and you could see that you're having a little bit of a struggle engaging a couple of the parents. We utilize that as the opportunity to kind of help engage them and not necessarily put them on the spot. And sometimes if it was a large group discussion, we would stop screen sharing the PowerPoint and open it up so it really looked like we were really having a conversation together. Mm-hmm. Those are things that we felt really helped. Those strategies really seemed to help to engage and pull the families in when it was, a little bit more of a struggle.
Yeah, I love that. It can be really hard to engage people virtually, especially if you haven't met them in person and trying to build that relationship through a screen. So I really appreciate those tips that you shared, Beth. Jasmine, what about you?
Yeah, for starters, I recommend having a co-facilitator or even a technical assistant the first time. Or maybe every time you facilitate a virtual PSF series. It can be a lot to do by yourself. But there's definitely some other tips and techniques that you can use to encourage engagement. In the beginning, I encourage families to call on someone else in the group to introduce themselves next, and that kind of keeps them engaged, and then they learn each other's names. My last tip would be to get comfortable with silence. Sometimes it takes families a little time after a question to build up the courage to speak. And so if you need to give them an extra moment of silence to build up that courage, you're not doing anything wrong. You just need a little bit more time for them to think about their answer.
Yeah, and I appreciate all these virtual tips and the world we're living in now. Anyone have any advice or tips for someone who might be planning an in-person positive solutions that you've used in the past?
I think I may be the only person that's done in person. I provided coffee and people seem to like that. Other than that, I think you just have to think about your space and is it conducive to, a conversation, because that's really what PSF ends up being, is a conversation amongst parents. It's almost like an extended support group where they get to learn stuff too. And so creating that space where they feel safe to do that.
Yeah, and you've all talked about kind of the facilitator's role and not only building the relationship and safety between you and the group as the facilitator, but with each other. And I love that, because we really, the opportunity they get to learn from each other and really have those deep, meaningful conversations is so important. So I'm going to move on to the script. So like I said, every session comes with a script. And like I said, these materials are also available in Spanish for our Spanish speakers. So all of the scripts come with a cover page like this that you see on the screen. It'll provide you with the training objectives for that item, the agenda for the day, and then the agenda also includes estimated timing. Again, like we said, that could really vary depending on the group that you have, or sometimes you might in your group get into a really great discussion about something. So really kind of being mindful about that as well. It also helps you prepare the necessary materials that the families will need. So I know Jasmine brought up the family handbook. So knowing which of those pages that you're going to reference during that specific session, and then the facilitator materials. So do you need chart paper if you're in person? I know I was fortunate, I got to sit in on one of Jasmine's sessions. And so in replacement of chart paper, what she did was she just made a duplicate slide in her PowerPoint that was empty, where she could capture participant responses. So I thought that was a really great virtual tip as well. So it really kind of outlines everything that you need to review before the session. And then during the session, you'll see every slide is paired to a part of the script. By no means are you expected to read word for word. That would probably be really boring for families. But the script itself, it's really just to give you the intention behind the content for each part. And what I do like is, we did try to prep you for, if you do have some of those quiet families, that in the blue, there could be things that you could say. Let's say you ask a discussion question and you just hear crickets. There are some ideas already there for you as a facilitator that you could share to link the material to what you're saying and really help families process the meaning of the content. Okay, so we have some other questions coming and that I want to make sure that we can address. So in thinking about the timing, because we talked about the time on the last slide, can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what's like kind of the best timing that you planned in your virtual events for each session? Thinking childcare, time of day.
So at our site, we had the ability to poll parents because most of the families who are attending are on a wait list. And so we can send them a couple of proposed times, and whichever has the highest desired, then we would do that group. But we've seen success both with evening, afternoon, and morning times. So like 10 to 12, 12 to 2. Well, really, we run 90-minute sessions, and then like a 6:30 to 8. I usually do the evening, and I will say that the tricky part there is families are usually doing bedtime, so they're trading off with a partner, or maybe they're alone with their children, and so they're oftentimes distracted, and that affects participation. But that might be the only time they might be working during the day, so they do what they can, and we do our best.
Yeah, and I even noticed, Jasmine, some of the parents in the session I got to see would kind of, because they were at home, could kind of tag team. Like one parent might still be putting the child to bed, and the other one could at least sit in and hear what was happening. So that kind of worked nicely, I thought, too. Beth, did you have any timing tips or?
Yes, I mean, there was some minimal polling where we did get some results that a lot of families felt the evening would be better, but we had the lowest attendance rate in the evening, even though we might have had, at capacity as far as registration, but they wouldn't show up. We were really more successful at kind of like a mid-morning. Thursday seemed to be a day that families really were drawn to. So doing it, we would allow for 2 hours, but the sessions typically were 90 minutes, with the exception of the routines. That one did go a little bit closer to the 2-hour mark, but we do find, it varies depending on on the families. You might get a large registration and then only 1 or 2 show up. So, it's hard to navigate and to know what's the right time. So that's why we tried offering multiple times.
Yeah, and I know both in Tennessee and New Jersey, just that strategy of polling families to really identify a good time, and maybe in that poll asking, like, do you prefer 90 minutes to 2 hours? But it sounds like, both groups, the 90 minutes seems to be the sweet spot. But I agree that the routines planning session does take a little longer, because we really want to make sure that families are understanding and thinking about that, and linking it to their experience. So in your facilitator script, you will also notice some of these visuals are spread throughout. It's really kind of just a visual aid for the facilitator to know what activities are happening in that session and when, to again help you plan and think about your time as you're planning. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about them on this slide, because we were really intentional with the types of activities we were choosing. We really wanted to make sure that all of the sessions really embed what we know about adult learning. So we really wanted to provide a lot of that self-reflection, facilitated group discussion with each other, to help process the information and the material, and also self-reflect, because I'll talk about the apply it and try it, but we really set it each session up so that we're encouraging families to then go home and use these strategies right away, so that the next session opens up with a reflection for families to really think about how did it go, and then maybe offer advice to each other in that session, in that discussion as well. And Beth and Gino did such a great job already talking about role play, because we know that role play can be a really great way to practice with each other before implementing a practice with their child, or maybe how the way Beth and Gino talked about it, modeling and showing what the practice looks like, so that they're understanding and building their confidence in using it. So sounds like both groups really did a great job thinking about the outside of the box with the role play, how to do that. And so, the role play does come like with little cards and your creativity. So I know Gino and Jasmine had props I saw when I saw them use the role play. We also use brainstorming. And so this provides families with the opportunity to just free flow ideas around a specific topic or strategy to really start that planning process. Because you've heard us talk about the routine family guide, all of that are using these strategies that we're talking about in their own home context to really think about what's that going to look like for me and my family, and which strategies, because we do offer a lot of strategies, do I maybe feel most comfortable trying right now? So it becomes very individualized for them on what they'd like to use. And the family handbook really helps support a lot of that planning, that brainstorming, to use those specific strategies at home. The apply it and try it is my favorite part because I, as a former early interventionist myself, really giving families the opportunity to then practice using these strategies in their own home context between sessions. They're not required to do it. Not everyone's comfortable doing it. That's okay. But when families do make that time and effort, we want to make sure that we're acknowledging it, that we're giving them space to reflect and talk about it, which is why we have a lot of that self-reflection embedded as well. So I wanted to take this time to think about, we know all the families that we work with, they come to us with their own unique characteristics, their own life experiences, their perspectives. So what facilitation techniques have you found most helpful when working with families with different cultural backgrounds, learning styles, educational backgrounds? Beth, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Okay, great. So New Jersey as a state is very diverse, and that's been one of the things that's been fascinating to me. We've had a very diverse group of families in every cohort that we've done, and we talk about our own personal bias and our own upbringing, and we allow them a safe space. Everyone has a bias some way, whether it was from their culture, whether it's a religion, whether it's just their upbringing. So we allow them a safe space. And one of the things that we saw happen that was really profound for me was when we had some different cultures participating in the groups, they connected a bond together. And they would talk about the cultural differences and how they're working within their community and helping them to understand that they have a child with a developmental delay or a disability. And we gave them that safe space to talk about it and to ask questions. And I think that really helped them to feel a little bit more comfortable. And, we were very sensitive. We asked them to be very, careful with the language and terms that they use and using child first language and things like that. But we did give them that safe space and, talked about, how every child needs somebody who's crazy about them. And that was something that we talked about not only for their own child, but for themselves. And when having that conversation with them, that really opened up the dialogue about different cultures and different biases. And they think that, that really helped them to get a little bit more comfortable and understanding.
Yeah, that's great. And I love how you brought, the point of non-judgment, the role of the facilitator and just helping that conversation just organically happen is really great because every group is so different in terms of their life experience, their characteristics. It's not necessarily easy to plan around that, but just knowing how to help guide that discussion when it comes up. Absolutely. Jasmine.
Yeah, for starters, I think we set the stage for a respectful environment through the ground rules. I think one of them is respect everyone's unique parenting journey. We're all in different stages in life in our parenting journeys, and we can have respect for wherever someone else is as well. Gino and myself came through RIP as parents. It's a individualized behavior intervention program, and I think that that's unique for us as facilitators to be able to offer our own lived experience too, as examples, throughout the sessions. And that's also a kind of a perk for us whenever there is a little bit of lull in conversation. But lastly, I did want to say that a tricky thing can be those reflective parts of the presentation each week at the beginning. Not all the families had time to do the activity, or maybe they just weren't inspired by that activity or something. And so I've always left it very open to not be so specific about this particular activity this week, but just where are you? What did you try this week? It might have been, we might be on week 5 today, and you may have just now gotten around to trying something from week 1, and that is okay. You're going to have access to this material for a long time. And I think that puts people at ease, that they're not like on stage and being tested for how well they did this week or something. It's just, we're all unique and we're all at different stages, and that's okay.
Yeah, or like feeling like they're behind, like, oh, I didn't do anything the first 2 weeks, so why try activities from week 3? Like
Exactly.
you did provide that space. And it's a lot about being flexible as a
Mhm.
facilitator, right? And being responsive when things come up to your group. Yeah. Thank you so much. So like I said, that we have the family handbook. And so this was, I think, Jasmine's favorite part of the materials, how she said, these are all the activity sheets that are in one spot that the families will work from throughout your sessions. And so this really helps you know, a lot of that brainstorming, that planning to set them up for that, apply it and try it, and to really process the information. And then we get to the family routine guide, which I know Beth touched on. So I love how Beth said, you know, families don't necessarily think about what they do with their child each day as a routine, but how this is a very big resource. You'll see, I know one strategy Jasmine and Gino had for sharing it, and Beth, I know Beth, you all shared it electronically with everybody in your sessions. Jasmine and Gino did the same, and they also had funding to ask, you know, some people are paper and pencil people. I myself am. If you would like it printed out, we can send it to you, because this is a big, I think it's like 40 something pages. But that's because we thought about, you know, typical parts of family's day, and you'll see in this kind of follows that PTRF process. So prevent, teach, reinforce. So in the Navy part, you'll see that's kind of the function or why we think the child might be having that behavior. And so there could be different functions for each routine that's listed, which is why it kind of becomes so big. And then in the orange section, you'll always see those are kind of the prevent strategy ideas that families can look at and choose from, and try to apply to a situation. The green is always going to be those response strategies, and then that turquoise blue are strategies to teach new skills. And then this is another one of my favorites as a former early interventionist, is the making a plan sheet. This is available in the family handbook, but it's also available in the family routine guide. And so this really gets addressed kind of at the end, at that session 7, where we help families kind of bring it all together, all the strategies we talked about, and help them think about a specific part of a day that maybe they're struggling with their child around a certain behavior, and to help them make a plan with it. So Jasmine, I wanted to ask you to share how you and Gino kind of set this up for families. You gave a choice with this, which I found really interesting.
Yeah, so the last week of the series, we have been offering families the option to either do a review of the previous weeks or do this make a plan session. And overwhelmingly, everyone wants to do the make a plan. They want something very simple that they can follow to start shifting that behavior.
Yeah, I love that, because you know, you think like, because I know in Gino talked about how in RIP, like you guys kind of pick and choose as a facilitator the activities that you want to do, which is something I love, like how you just show the flexibility as a facilitator. And then you usually try, if there's something you didn't get to because you're trying to stick to that 90-minute timing, to do that in the last session. It kind of, I guess, for me, reiterates like the importance that families are saying, hey, we want a plan. So I really like to hear that they're finding value in it too. Beth, I have a question, kind of like from a family perspective, and then I want to get Gino's input too. What was your confidence level using the materials or strategies? Oh, sorry. I wanted to ask Gino this question, my fault. Because I know Jasmine and Gino, you went through this as a family, and Beth has some insight as from a facilitator perspective she's going to share. But what was your confidence level going through positive solutions as a family participant yourself after the sessions were over, actually using the strategies?
I would say, you know, one of the reasons we were at RIP in the first place is because we were kind of at a loss as to what to do with their kid. And so with Positive Solutions, we were given some strategies that that we wouldn't have thought of on our own. Mostly just from, I think, from feeling the stress of dealing with a child using aggressions and extreme tantrums in public. I would say that what I felt was Positive Solutions kind of set us up to experience success at RIP. Getting that overall aspect of trying to switch our attention and our language towards positive, using positive language instead of negative language, which, you know, that's one of our first strategies at RIP too, is really getting a parent to be aware how much behavior can be caused just by the way they're talking to their child. And that's where I feel like the Positive Solutions set us up for success with RIP, that we may not have had quite the success, or RIP may have been a even more challenging than it actually was.
Yeah, so it sounds like it kind of helped lay a foundation for you. So you were understanding the content going into the RIP program. And I loved how you brought up the use of positive language. That for me was something I struggled with too. This is going to sound so weird, but the only way for me to practice it was going around using it on my pets. Before I was using it on children. So that is like, it's kind of a mindset shift of using that positive language to give directions and things like that. Jasmine, did you have anything you wanted to add?
So I actually did not go through the series before I started facilitating, but I had just graduated the RIP program and came on as a staff member, and I sat in on a coworker who was facilitating a series at the time. And it was so nice because it brought everything together for me. At RIP, we kind of assumed that the bottom of the pyramid is already in place and we're going into more individualized intervention strategies, right? And so I didn't know about the power of connection. I didn't know about emotional literacy and things like that. And so seeing my child as a whole human and in going back to connection every time made all of the difference, I think, for me. And like to Gino's point, made RIP more successful for me in the end, because almost all the time when my son is having a hard time, I can almost always relate it back to connection. So I can always go back to week 1 of PSF and go, have I had quality time with him this week? Probably not.
Yeah, because a lot of those behaviors can be so attention seeking. And it sounds like your role as a facilitator and a parent, it just kind of reinforces the content for you either way. And Beth, and you had some good advice, because I know there are a lot of strategies that are shared in this, and you know, for families walking away, maybe feeling overwhelmed, what to, you know, I tried that and it didn't work. You know, you had some good advice I wanted to make sure you shared.
Thank you. Well, and I love what Jasmine and Gino said, that, you know, positive encouragement and the, you know, the emotional literacy is such a key part of it. And when, you know, we're facilitating, we talk to the families about how, you know, it might not work the first time, or it might work the first time and it might not work the second time. But these are lifelong strategies. These aren't just for this moment. It's not just for when your child's 6 months old or 10 years old. These are strategies and techniques that you can use throughout their life. And I know I have a child I just sent to college and I use this with him. So, I mean, you know, it's not, you know, and that's kind of where I practiced a little bit, was with my husband and my son. So, you know, having families, letting them know if it didn't work, it's okay. And they may need to adjust it and adapt it based on their age and, what is happening within their life. So I think that's something, to always keep in mind, that, it may not work at that moment, but, give it time, keep practicing. And again, you may have to adjust it, and that's okay. And that's okay.
Yeah, and even thinking about the toolbox, the strategy might work right away. And then 2 weeks later, they're like, nope. And you got to think of something new. So I think what is great about positive solutions with families, it kind of gets them thinking through that problem solving process. So thank you all for your perspectives on that. So I also wanted to talk about the PowerPoints lastly. So we kind of wanted to create a routine within the PowerPoint sessions, because you're thinking about parallel process. Routines and predictability aren't just great for children, they're great for all humans, including adults. So these are some slides, you would recognize the cover slide for each session. There's always an affirmation slide. Like Jasmine said, the apply it and try it at the end. It kind of follows the same flow. It reminds families of what handbook activities they're going to work on or try at home for that week. But that was the piece where Jasmine was saying, she also reminded, hey, if there's something else you want to work on from a previous session, that's okay too, and come back and share it. And to go along with that predictability, all of the sessions have this agenda slide, so it lets families know what's going to happen throughout that particular session. At the last page of the Facilitators Guide, you'll see, if you're using it virtually, all these materials are just a click away. All the links are embedded. So it's a really great idea prior to presenting your sessions to really just think about any of the materials that you want to share and how you're going to share it. So are you going to do a make and take, maybe helping them to create visuals themselves if you're in person? Are you going to just share them linked in the chat box for that session? Are you going to send them all in advance? So really thinking about that. I just wanted to kind of ask a general question to all of you. I'll start with Beth on this one. From your facilitator perspective, was there a specific strategy, resource, or session that you found most helpful?
Yes, the one that stands out the most for me is the use of first and then in session 5. That was something that families really grabbed onto. We had families who were struggling. They had a child who constantly wanted to go outside, but it was a fight, a physical fight, just to get shoes on with the child. And using that approach and that technique of first you put your shoes on and then you get to go outside, that, kind of give and take, that really seemed, that was a strategy that was really effective with the families that we worked with. And it was something that's still stands out for me. Like I said, I'm using it at home too. So I think, that was definitely a strategy that was really concrete, that a family can understand and try immediately.
Yeah, that first and then can be such like an aha strategy, I think, for both the parents and the child. And I know Gino had brought up the use of using positive language. Was there anything else, Jasmine or Gino, you wanted to add?
Sure. So I could say so many things about what's my favorite. I love these new materials. But the one thing that really stands out to me, I think, is the weekly affirmation. Where I work at RIP and also in Positive Solutions, I think families are feeling really guilty and ashamed about the behavior that they're experiencing. And they need to know they're doing a good job, and having space to reflect on their efforts and say something nice about themselves is necessary for this work.
Absolutely. That self-talk sometimes can be our own worst enemy. So helping families flip the script for themselves is so important. I think we are out of time for questions. So I'm going to hand things over now to Victor. But I just wanted to say thank you, Beth, Jasmine, Gino. All of your insights and everything today are so insightful and I think helpful for anyone viewing this webinar. And for all of you attending today, thank you for your participation. I saw the chat was pretty lively. And I'll hand things now off to Victor.
Well, thank you so very much to our panelists for their wonderful insights. Your feedback is very important to the work that we do. Please remember to provide your feedback on this webinar with our post-webinar survey by typing the web address shown on this slide into your internet browser. Your certificate of attendance will appear once you submit the survey. We invite you to visit our website, challengingbehavior.org, to sign up for our upcoming webinars, access recordings, download pyramid model resources, and more. Thank you to our funder for making this webinar possible. This concludes our webinar. Thank you all and have a great rest of your day.